Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be once again able to share a message with you. In the verses that we read from his letter to the Romans, Paul says, love is the fulfilling of the law. And this claim probably sounds to us very counterintuitive, very contradictory. We don't think of love and law having much in common. We think of love as warm, affirming, liberating. We think of law as cold, judgmental, and confining. But Paul not only puts the two terms together, but claims that love is the fulfillment of the law. That is, love is the completing of the law. Love is the means of bringing to fruition the character and purpose of the law. Clearly, Paul has in mind a different meaning to the term law from what we're expecting. So what is Paul's understanding of the law? Paul believes, like Jesus or any sincere Jew, that the mediating of the law through Moses was an act of God's goodness. The Hebrew word for law is Torah, and Torah is more accurately translated instruction. The law then is intended to instruct people about the secure, satisfying, and harmonious way of life that God wants them to enjoy, and about the loving spirit that motivates God's intention. The Torah, that is the law, also instructs humans about the spirit of love in which they are to respond to God, and the forms of relationship towards God, other people, and nature that are and are not appropriate as responses. It is instruction about living this way of life that Paul means by the term the law. Paul, in the verses we read, quotes from the most important statement about the law in the book of the Older Covenant, that is the Ten Commandments. If Israel abides by the prohibitions against idolatry, unappreciativeness, and injustice, while at the same time celebrating God's faithful commitment to their well-being, then Israel will be God's witness people to all the other peoples, and thereby bring humankind into a glad and loyal union with God and with one another. Then human love will be united with God's love, and the Torah, God's intended way of life for humankind, will be fulfilled. The character of this divine love is the same both in the books of the Older Covenant and the Newer Covenant. It is passionate, committed, active caring about the well-being of others. The emphasis in the scriptures of the Older Covenant is about expressing this love towards Israelites, although mention is made about extending it to non-Jews who live among the Israelites. Jesus broadens the extent of this love to not only include non-Jews, but even enemies, because he teaches his followers to love your enemies. So neighbor means anyone you know or know about, near at hand, far away, including even those who oppose you and want to do you harm. I want to refer to two contemporary applications of what it means to love our neighbor and so fulfill the law of liberating and satisfying life. Expressing this passionate, committed, active caring for the well-being of our human nature and human neighbors is something that the Christian church has recognized and taught from the beginning. Today, we have to extend the meaning of loving our neighbor further by recognizing that nature is our neighbor. And in this church season of creation, we need to point out that if a neighbor ever needed loving, it is nature. We have enslaved nature, raped and poisoned nature. We have disintegrated, destabilized, and wasted nature. We've caused extensive extinction of living creatures in the ground, in the sea, and in the air. We've used resources to make products which are not intended to be recycled either by humans or by the earth, but to be thrown away in a useless, ugly, and unhealthy manner. We've released energy from the burning of carbon to such an extent that carbon dioxide is heating our fragile atmosphere so much that the mutually life-supporting systems of the planet are being seriously disturbed. So much so that life in the future will probably be much more insecure. We have to have our minds and our eyes open to the beauty, care, and resourcefulness of nature and love it like we love our mothers, one of the closest of our neighbors. The other application I want to make is that loving our neighbor needs not only to be expressed positively through giving personal help or by contributing to charities, activities that we're usually quite comfortable about, but loving our neighbor needs also to be expressed, if I may put it this way, negatively, which we are usually uncomfortable about. Loving our neighbor does not just mean helping our neighbor to enjoy the goodness of life, which of course it most sincerely does, but it also means helping our neighbor by defending them from the evils of life. In fact, the two, of course, are linked. In order for Black and Indigenous people to feel safe, the police need to be stopped from systemic racism. This kind of caring requires supporting our deprived and oppressed neighbors through advocacy and demonstrations so that they will be treated with the same dignity, respect, fairness, understanding, and opportunity as the more privileged and powerful in our society. Black lives matter, Indigenous lives matter, women matter, LGBTQT lives matter. Loving our neighbor means insisting in one way and another that racism, sexism, homophobia, classism must stop. And that through educational programs on the one hand and laws on the other, these evils must be brought to an end. My mother, who went through a lot of difficulties in her life, used to say, justice is for those who can afford it. And that is unfortunately often still true. But we should want that to change. Love requires prohibitions with justice intentions to promote and protect the liberating law of life. Love fulfills the law, and the law facilitates love. And returning to this church season of creation, loving our neighbor means recognizing that the present systems of world economy, whether they're based on the capitalist market model or on the socialist planned model, must be challenged challenged to stop seeing which one can produce the most individual or social wealth and power. Both these economic systems have to be replaced by ones that are focused on benefiting the common good, not just the good of a wealthy elite or a political elite, but providing greater social equality in wealth, justice, and opportunity, greater caring for children and the elderly, greater respect for nature, greater restraint and recycling as regards our natural resources, greater use of recyclable energy, and greater costs placed on sources of pollution of the air, sea, and ground. We need persuasion, motivation, and legislation to make these things happen, and to happen fast, so that all of our neighbors, present and future, will be able to enjoy a more sustainable, safe, just, and hopeful life. Again, love requires prohibitions with justice intentions to promote the liberating law of life. Love fulfills the law, and the law facilitates love. These are just two examples of resisting evil, and you can probably think of others. So then, love is the fulfilling of the law, where love means passionate, committed, active caring about the well-being of others, and where the law means the liberating way of life that God wants us to experience and enjoy together. Loving like this requires us to help promote the goodness of life that my neighbor can and should enjoy, and to support their resistance against the evil that my neighbor does, or can, or will suffer. It means acting privately, but also publicly, as an individual or as a member of an organization. It means witnessing to the genuineness, greatness, and goodness of the Holy One's caring character and peaceful purpose in ways that are important to the general population. When we love like this, then both we and our neighbors can know, feel, and enjoy the creative, generous, lasting, and satisfying benefits of God's divine presence and the divine commonwealth. Love fulfills the law, and the law facilitates love. Love and law belong together. Thanks be to God. Amen.